felt like it was my job to go look up the city ordinance. But you did, so now we have to make a correction.
Attention, please. Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, 6:02 p.m. I'll call to order the meeting of the Keystone Heights Airport Authority Board of Directors. And I ask you to please stand for prayer and then pledge of allegiance. City Manager, Mr. Van Zant, will do a prayer.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this great day, for our freedom, Lord. We thank you for the ability to come together in public, Lord, and do the business of this city's airport. Lord, I thank you for the people that are willing to serve on this committee, Lord. I thank you for your grace as people fly in and out of here safe, Lord. We pray for our men and women all over the globe tonight, Lord, that are standing watch and protecting our freedom. Many sick and afflicted in our area that we all know, Lord. You know each name, I don't, but I pray that you meet their needs at their greatest point. Lord, help us more than anything else tonight to conduct the business in an honorable way and that it would be honoring in your sight. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. That's Craig. Yeah. Hang on, we're gonna.
I just want to make sure the thermostat didn't go up to a nightly number.
Good. All right, roll call, please.
Yep, Mr. Kirkwood.
Present.
Mr. Fryer. Here. Mr. Dagenet.
Here.
Mr. Ludwig.
Here.
And Mr. Seaver.
Here. All right, next item on our agenda is public comments. Mr. Kuhn, you have public comment.
Yep, I did get a card here from Ms. Hintz, Mr. Bunn, and Mr. Betancourt.
All right. Let's go first.
Yeah, I'll stand up. My name's Lorena. I'm the vice president of the firm. I've been there for a little over 6 years. And basically, we just wanted to come and pose some questions. The main purpose being, I also wanted to introduce John Van Buskirk, one of our instructors. And this is Raul Betancourt. He's actually, they're both very tired because they're in the middle of military training right now. So he is our Special Forces Director, and he's done an amazing job bringing in more Special Forces contracts. So we have a lot of military training going on. Almost the whole month of April is booked with military training. And you talked about praying for people's lives. One of the biggest causes of fatalities and loss of life is due to not having the proper driving skills when you're being shot at. So the service that we provide is amazing. We provide a lot of it, and Raul, I don't know if you want to share anything about the other municipalities that we're helping do that, and then I'll hand it over to Robert Bunn. Robert Bunn there was a little confusion about Robert Bunn. Robert Bunn is the president of the firm, but he also happens to be our main company's in-house legal counsel. So when you saw a letter on his letterhead, as the president of the firm, of course he's writing it, but he has a dual role. So hopefully that clears up that why it was coming from legal.
Thank you.
And Raul, I don't know if you want to.
Yes, so like Lorena said, I'm in charge of training on the military. And aside from doing the military, I'm also doing all the local law enforcement. So I take care of Putnam, Bradford. I just got St. John's and, in the books. And I'm working on Alachua and Clay. Clay is a little more difficult for me to get to. But that's who I'm working with. And one of the things that I start doing annually is I bring them all together. We compete against each other, against all the municipalities here at the range and on the track. So other than the military, that's what I do.
Thank you very much. I just want to make a couple comments about the February 23rd, 2024 letter from Ryan Allen of the FAA that was sent to Craig Kuhn, the airport manager. As to the potential non-compliance of the track location itself, the firm assumed the lease in 2012, and obviously it's a material fact, but it was never an issue of us when we assumed the lease, obviously. Additionally, the firm was verbally informed the FAA approved the airport master plan with the firm track in its current location. We would like a copy of the master plan with the FAA approval letters, any FAA approval letters that there might have been, and to understand what the board believes its current options are. We'd also like to know how the firm can best support the board and the airport. We appreciate the relationship and we want to help support any way we can. In terms of fair market value that was addressed in the FAA letter, the rent increase through both renewal terms was contractually agreed upon prior to our assuming the lease. The predictable rent escalation schedule was an inducement the firm relied upon to assume the lease and make significant investments to and for the business and property, a sum of over $4 million. The firm is an anchor tenant with a positive $1 million economic impact to the community, and as such, the current rent we believe is appropriate. Prior to assuming the lease, the firm confirmed the rental increase through the renewal terms would remain consistent. We are requesting that tonight the board resolve any non-compliant issues and approve our renewal notice at the contractually agreed upon rate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. And we do have an agenda item tonight that we'll be discussing those issues. So,
Thank you so much.
Good. All right, very good. All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda is approval of the consent agenda. You had received prior to this from Mr. Kuhn, the January 2024 financials, as well as the February 6, 2024 board meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Dagenet, second. All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Moving on to reports. Mr. Prane.
Good evening, members of the board and everyone present. A couple of reports on projects that are either in engineering and or construction. First one is the runway 1129 lighting rehab. All work is complete. As you know, the project included replacement of the runway edge lights, new PAPI units at each end of the runway, new runway end lights at the runway 11 end, also at runway 5 and at 2-3. And some additional guidance signs, exit signs at both connectors and some other hold signs, informational signs, et cetera. So again, the contractor still has to come back before the end of the month, do a little bit of cleanup work. There's some form boards still stacked in their staging area near the vault building. They stored some leftover sonotube and some leftover transformers and other miscellaneous equipment in the vault. So they're gonna come pick that up. They got a little bit of sweeping to do and check to make sure some of the grass seed they planted is properly germinated, but project's essentially done. At the next board meeting, I intend to bring you a final change order for that project to reconcile all the final quantities. It was a unit price contract, so there's 30 some items where we actually measured quantities and we'll pay exactly what was installed, not just what was estimated. So anybody have any questions on the runway? The lights have been burning for over a month now, so I think everything is essentially done. The work that still has to be done, you won't even notice we're doing it, maybe 2 days of cleanup, and then the contractor will be out of here. Any questions on that? We've had a chance to land on it.
Lights look good.
Lights
Yeah,
look
they do
good.
look good.
Thank you, David. That was actually the goal. So mission accomplished.
And we did have one of the tenants say that you can see the FAPI lights from about 8 or 10 miles out. They're very bright,
That's good.
extremely.
Okay. Next item, Some older project, taxi lane. In last year's budget, we started and completed a project to rehab all of the taxi lanes in the T-hangar area. It was a project funded by both FAA and FDOT. And we've been slowly but steadily collecting closeout documents from the contractor, one of which is the final change order, which I believe was in your board packet. So just as a summary of that, the contract was awarded to CGC Incorporated, located in Jacksonville. The original contract amount as awarded was $2,052,556.95. There was a previous change order to add $2,400 for the replacement of a concrete slab in front of hangar A5, I believe it was. And this change order to reconcile final quantities and clean up all of the final financial matters with CGC is an additional $5,878.79. The final contract sum with CGC will then be $2,060,665.06. There was no need to adjust contract time because they finished the project within the allowable contract time limit. I will say, I'm going to ask the board, after your questions are answered, for a resolution to adopt this so that it could be signed. The DOT has already reviewed and approved and signed the document. The FAA has already approved, reviewed, and assigned the document, and of course the contractor did. That was where we started first, once we reached agreement with them. You'll notice that there is a net increase of about $8,000, give or take. I'll point out that although the contract with CGC is a net increase of $8,000, you will be receiving a decrease when AECOM closes our contract of $77,000. So you'll actually finish your grant under the allotted grant amount. So roughly 70,000, 69,000, you're gonna finish the project under budget essentially. So, and I'm not asking you to approve the decrease in the AECOM contract. I just offered that so that anybody was concerned about how are we gonna cover the extra $8,000, you're actually gonna net a decrease on the project. That was a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions about how this process works or about the change order specifically? I would entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Fryer. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Ludwig. Any other questions or discussion about the change order and the closeout? All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Period. All right.
Okay.
We have the documents.
Still on that project, I'm working this week on our final invoice, which I'll submit to Craig for processing. And then again, there's a whole closeout book, several documents that we've been compiling to provide to both funding agencies. And that will allow Craig to receive final reimbursements. With the FAA and the DOT, there's a closeout process where we will reconcile with them, but that doesn't require board action. It's just some accounting work that Craig and staff will do to close out both grants. And the work on that one's been long since completed, so that contractor is well off-site. Third project I want to report on is the utility feasibility study. So I know some of you on the board have heard of this. You may not have been here when we started the project, but over the course of the last few years, the board and the city and prior airport management staff had been talking to Clay County Utility Authority about the possibility of, in the future, extending municipal water and sewer lines to the airport. Both water and sewer now terminate in the vicinity of the Orange Blossoms restaurant and the RV park. CCUA has water line and sewer line that come that far. So in the discussions with CCUA, they were amenable to the discussion, but they basically said, You need to go do a feasibility study, come back with some real numbers. We did that. We've done that. And today I emailed to Craig and David and some other of the stakeholders a draft of the final document. And Mr. Van Zandt, just in case you weren't brought up to speed, the city funded the majority of this study in cooperation with the airport that funded part of it as well. So you're a stakeholder, you got an email. The Bradford County manager has been reviewing documents along with us as a cooperating entity, and 3 members of the Clay County Utility Authority staff have been our contact points there. So the document's available. If any other board member wants to read it, you can get a copy from Craig. It's about 80 pages. It's a lot of stuff about potable water service to the airport in the future through municipal source, sanitary sewer lines from here back to the Clay County Utility Wastewater Treatment Plant system. And it also discusses fire protection water, which would not come from a municipal source, but continue to be sourced through above ground water storage tanks. We're going to have about a 2 to 3 week period where stakeholders can review that and give us comments. And then if the board wishes at that time, I could either arrange for a standalone meeting for staff. I can have someone come and present to the whole board, or we can just deliver the document to you and call it done. The end result here was to come up with a plan, to come up with a phasing approach to the plan with some cost estimates, and then coordinate that through CCUA and any other possible funding agencies to fund the work. If you don't know, everything at the airport now is on well and septic, which works fine for small users, but when it comes to enticing light industrial or other larger complexes, they often want and need municipal water and sewer to make their plan feasible.
So to follow up on Mr. Frank's comments, CCUA board met a couple of weeks ago. During that board meeting, they decided to allocate $311,000 to an engineering firm that will look at the existing water treatment facility that the city has because it's near capacity. So that's in the process to help with this project eventually, in that with the 2 developments that are within the city that would add to that capacity at Keystone, there was the additional capacity, which is really not a lot here at the airport, but between here and the RV park, there could be a lot of additional capacity in the future, depending on how those properties develop. So it was good to hear that CCUA had been proactive in putting that amount of money toward looking at what it's going to cost to upgrade the existing facility there at Keystone. The other thing with respect to presenting the final document, and I'll ask Mr. Van Zandt, because the city was involved in this, would you like for Mr. Prain to plan to do a presentation at the city just to make the council aware of that final?
That would probably wash. I think we should.
Okay. You want to put that on your April agenda? Would you be available the first Monday of April?
It's April Fool's Day, April 1st. Notice that today.
Check your calendar.
Look at my calendar.
Check your calendar and.
Come in May, I mean, you're not gonna pull sewer out here quickly.
What time would the meeting be? April 1?
1800, yeah.
I think it's good information because the city was involved with helping fund it and get it moving forward, because that's what CCUA had asked for, was a feasibility study. So it's done. Now we can get a plan of action going.
And we've worked with CCUA the entire way. They approved the scope when we first started, before we started. Just if you're going to take on the reading of it, if you've been in the stakeholder group for a while, you know we issued technical memos along the way. Those are essentially chapters of the final report. So the final report is a compilation of the technical memos after having been reviewed. We added an executive summary. We've enhanced some of the graphics based on comments we received, and there's some cost estimating information. So if all you want to do is read the executive summary, that for some of you, that might be enough potable water and sanitary sewer discussion to check the box. But again, Craig has the document. It's email, it's a PDF format. If somebody wants a paper copy, I can make that available too, but I would suggest you work that request through Craig. And that's all the report I have on that.
All right, thank you, Mr.
And I'll
Prine.
email you guys about the April 1st.
Okay, very good. All right, any other questions for Mr. Prine before he leaves?
I do have one question, just because when this was brought up, one of the last times that you had talked about it, we had a member of the public that was here that had asked the question, because a lot of this, I don't know the entirety of it, but there's a good amount of this that's going into another county on its way to get here. The question had come is how much is being contributed, if there was any being contributed with that county also, along with Keystone Heights. And is that something
Funding the
that's still?
study or funding the future
Funding,
construction of the system?
I don't know if it had to do with the study and future, or if the study was all just for, if it was the city of Keystone Heights was doing just the study.
So the study was funded by the city and by the airport board. And I believe the ratio was the city funded 110,000. They actually funded the first 110,000. And then the airport has been paying the remainder 25,000. Neither county, Bradford County nor Clay County, has funded any part of the study. And I don't believe either county has been approached about funding any of the construction. And I might get a little over my head here, but I believe Clay County Utility Authority is an autonomous body.
Right, 'cause that's
not
what-
part of county government.
Yes.
Hence, there was, to this point, there's been no reason to engage with Clay County government proper.
Right. Yeah, and because I remember we had that whole discussion, we were trying to determine there with the utility authority, kind of if they were affiliated either way. And then it was a question of also, you're talking about utilities that are coming, that are basically spanning two counties, so.
They have not expressed any concerns with their ability to do that or their desire to do that. I think they've always wanted to know what would it cost. And I think they've wanted to say, you know, if you're interested in pursuing this city and airport, do a real study, show us real numbers. And so that's what we've done. The previous city manager, I don't know how much legwork she did, but I know she was, you know, targeting possible congressional, you know, BIL funds as a possible funding source for, and like, listen, I'm not telling you what to do here. I don't recall the total dollar value, but I don't think this gets funded all at once. A project of this type almost always gets done in stages or phases. And in the end, there's probably multiple agencies that might contribute to the funding at varying levels, depending on how they benefit from it. So we're at the beginning of that part of a discussion. The report draws no conclusions about where the funding might come from.
Okay.
So, did I answer your question? Sort of.
There was just, I remember when we were on this that last time, there was just kind of still some open ends, so that kind of helps.
And David mentioned it too, but one of the things CCUA wanted us to do, and we did it with their input and input from the community, there's obviously a stretch of highway between the end of their lines now and here. So if they were to build it to here, it wouldn't just benefit the airport, there would be other people along the way that would either be enticed or want to connect to it. So our study does include growth and capacity along the State Road 100 corridor. In fact, in all honesty, the lion's share of who would want that water or move water to the sanitary system is from off-site. The airport need, relatively speaking, is small because you're going to provide fire protection water through above-ground storage tanks. There's a natural limitation to the flow and pressure that a 12-inch line can produce. And can almost never produce enough to handle a large hangar fire suppression. So those types of systems are almost always standalone above ground or dedicated well systems, which you have one of those now here, and there'll be another one on the west side in the future, I believe. That's all detailed in the report. There's some pretty pictures. I mean, again, it's not exciting reading, so it's definitely a cure for insomnia. Unless you're into water and sewer.
Bill, I have one question. If it in fact does take place, will we have to remove all the septic systems? Or will they just be allowed to?
So again, I think that's maybe above my pay grade and not really the purpose of the study, but most projects of this type, when municipal services come into an area, one way or another over a span of time, the goal and purpose is to retire septic systems and to retire most or all well systems and put those buildings and services on the municipal system. There's a couple different ways that can be done in terms of who does it, who pays for it, and what the timetable is. But I think that's all discussion that has to be held down the road once you actually have the first phase of a project that's coming online.
Okay, thank you.
But I think the goal would be to retire those, yes.
I believe there's some legislation that's been proposed to have by 2035, everything on some sort of water treatment facility. That's a huge task, but that's my understanding. That's a proposal. All right, any other questions for Mr. Frank? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you again for allowing me to depart early. Appreciate that very much. Call if you need.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Whitney is not with us tonight from DOT, so we'll move on in our agenda. First item on my agenda items is the firm FAA update, and I've asked our attorney, Jim Taylor, to come and address the board and the guest with some information that's pertinent to this whole process. So, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkland. Good evening, all. And I want to say I appreciate the representatives of the firm taking time to join the meeting tonight.
Thank you.
So I believe all the board members have seen the FAA's notice of potential noncompliance that was received on about February 23rd. And it concerns several matters that relate to the firm's lease, of course. There are 3 specified items in the letter, as I'm sure you saw. The first 2 of them deal with aeronautical and airport use issues. The third issue deals with the question of fair market value rent for the firm's lease. That third issue is the one that Mr. Kirkland has asked me to be involved in. And if you read the letter, you see that it requires that the board, the airport, respond to the FAA within 30 days, which means we have to provide a response by March the 24th. And I sat down with Mr. Kirkland and Mr. Kuhn last week, I guess it was, to talk about how the board should go about addressing this with the FAA. The very basic background of this is we have, of course, an appraisal that was done last December by an appraiser in Ocala, a fellow named Steve Albright. I talked with Mr. Albright. He's got a wealth of experience in appraising fair market value rents for both aeronautical and non-aeronautical leases at airports. And he's knowledgeable about the appraisal methodology that the FAA prefers, if not requires. And so he used that methodology to appraise the fair market value of the firm's lease, of the land that the firm leases. And as you're probably already aware, his resulting appraised value was that the fair market value rent for the firm lease currently, or at least as of the time of his appraisal in December, was a range from $88,920 a year to $100,035 a year. And just for comparison purposes, the firm's current annualized rent is a little bit under $25,000. So those are the facts on which the FAA was looking, at which it was looking in issuing the notice of potential noncompliance as it concerns the fair market value rent. As the board members are probably already aware, the FAA, as a matter of policy and rule, has a long-standing requirement applicable to non-aeronautical leases, such as the firms. The sponsor of the airport it must charge fair market value rent. And the lease, firm's lease, the one that they took over from European Rally that dates back to June of 1999, like all of the airport's leases, at least all the ones I'm aware of, contains a clause that, among other things, specifies that the lease is subject to review by the FAA, and the parties, the landlord and the tenant, shall modify the lease as required pursuant to such review. So that's basically the setting in which the board has to decide how it's going to address these issues of noncompliance, potential noncompliance, specifically insofar as I've been asked to be involved, the fair market value rent issue. And obviously the firm has a stake in this matter. We both of us, because of the terms of the lease, we both of us are answerable to the FAA for compliance. And it was Mr. Kirkland's thought, which I think is a good one, because it will allow all the board members to be actively involved in formulating the response, also enable us to get representatives of the firm to participate as well as other stakeholders such as the city and any other interested citizens, to have a public workshop, schedule a workshop, let everybody attend. And the goal, at least from my way of thinking, the goal from the standpoint of the board, the airport, is to do the best we can to try to come up with a resolution that we can report and ask the FAA to approve, report to and ask the FAA to approve, that will be an agreed position with the firm, rather than becoming adversarial about this, work together to try to come up with a way that we can be comfortable that the board is being a good steward of the airport. And part of what the board was, I believe, instituted to do starting in the early 1990s was to run the airport like a business and to make some money. To satisfy that stewardship responsibility, also answer satisfactorily to the FAA with something that hopefully we and the firm can both jointly propose as a resolution that will satisfy the FAA that we comply with the requirement that our leases be fair market value rent. I think the board obviously needs to discuss that.
So I just want to follow up with Mr. Taylor in saying that I think I can speak for this board, but we want to keep all of our tenants. We want to keep all of our tenants. Tenants are valuable to us, valuable to this community. And so in looking at having a time to come together and in the workshop to discuss options, that's the purpose for the workshop. Our immediate responsibility right now is to respond to the FAA. If you read the letter, it basically asks that we confirm, acknowledge that we'd received the letter, and basically that we have reviewed it, we're looking at it, and we're taking steps to resolve the issues that they've submitted. So Mr. Kuhn and I could put that together. We can send that draft form if the board would like to see that letter before it goes out. We'll also do that in conjunction with Mr. Taylor. and respond back to the FAA first, because we do have a deadline to meet this month to them. So what I'd like for you to do next is, let's all of us break out our calendars and figure out when we could have the workshop.
So you're saying all the letter has to do is let them know that we are working towards the means of an end, or correct? A resolution, we don't have to have a resolution by that date.
That's correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Green, if you want to just share, you spoke with Mr. Ryan.
Yeah,
Allen.
Yep.
With the FAA this afternoon.
To them around 4:30 today and confirmed that they just want a letter confirming that we acknowledge and working on some kind of a solution. Yeah.
All right, let's throw some dates out here. How about the week of the 18th?
That won't work. We've got the snowbird aerobatic
Oh, that's right.
competition.
That's our competition coming in, or they're coming in that week.
Yes.
How about the week of the 11th? Any of those days? I'm open that whole week myself.
Talking
11.
about next week,
Yes,
11th of March.
yes. Sometime during that week.
I'm open Tuesday through
I'll be out
Friday.
Monday, Tuesday.
You're going to be out the 11th, 12th. What about the 13th?
I have to work that day.
I'm open on the 14th.
I got 14th or.
If that'll work.
How about 14th?
I can't be here that morning. I've got to be with the FDOT TPO people, but I can send somebody.
We can meet that afternoon,
Okay. That would work. We
after lunch work.
13, 1 o'clock, something like that, 2 o'clock.
Mr. Bun, Lorena, how does that calendar, that date look for you?
Looking okay for me. She's talking about 14th,
Yes, sir.
Thursday. Sure.
Thursday, the 14th.
We need to arrange.
2 o'clock?
What time would be good for everybody? 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock? What's better? Would 2 help you out as far as giving you a little leeway on your,
It would,
FDOT?
but don't
all right, let's go
around me.
with 2 PM, March 14th. We will get emails out to everyone and invites for that. Mayor, would that work for you as well?
I can be here.
Okay, Vice Mayor? Excellent.
Thank you.
Very good. Or any of the other council members. I mean, it's a public meeting, open for everyone, so, okay.
Prior to that, just to circle back to what Robert had read for the public record, and as part of the public record, one of before we put the cart before the horse, one of our concerns, and a big, obviously for us concern, is the alleged noncompliance of a big portion of our track. So if that issue isn't kind of addressed here on where the board's thinking is, it leaves us at a big disadvantage because we don't know all the working aspects of how the FAA works, but they're basically saying, hey, a large portion of your very multi-million-dollar track, because they're very expensive to lay track, is in runway 11, and that's not in compliance. And this is the first notice that we've ever received regarding that. So we do want to have some conversation and understanding about what that means and what you all are thinking in terms of that, because like Robert read, when we took over the lease in 2012, that's a material fact that wasn't disclosed to us. And also the comp plan, I understand, was signed off on. That's why we're asking for those FAA sign-off letters. So it caught us off guard that the FAA is now bringing up this, historical issue that we're hearing of, it for the first time. And as to the appraisal, I think it's very important to redress what we're doing in terms of our rent, because the appraisal said that we were not paying the correct rent amount, which again was a very big shock to us because we thought that we have always paid our rent on time and correctly. So to get a formal document like that we knew would be going to the FAA saying that we're in arrears really scared us. So we wrote a letter and provided to the best of our ability. We knew paying more than probably what we owed, but this is another issue that I've asked for a rent schedule. I haven't gotten it. We need to understand, because we have 3 leases, we have the firm main lease that says it's automatically 1.5% every year. But then I understand because of COVID, which we appreciate, the board didn't charge any rent increases to any of the airport tenants. But we never got notice that these years you don't have a rent increase. So we don't know what years there were no rent increase or what you all, the board is using as the CPI, because the other two leases are the CPI up to 3%. But we never got formal notices every year from the board. Here is the CPI we're using. Here is your new rent amount for each lease. And so we can't know, we're kind of in the dark. And when I asked about the check, because we started getting notices from the airport recently that we owed the airport money after we have delivered a $26,000 check.
You got your regular monthly invoice.
We were, well, okay, but we were told, in writing that we owe money, but we don't know where this $26,000 is. So could we know where the $26,000 is? Like, why are we getting delinquent notices if we delivered, rent?
Well, let me.
So these are three things that, he kind of addressed in his letter, but we have tried to call, we have tried to ask these questions for our own understanding, and we keep being told that they're with the attorney. So you can understand as a business that it's important that we understand what your thinking is and what's really going on with these very big issues that could really affect, to the tune of millions of dollars, how we operate our business. So if my voice sounds a little shaky, it's pretty scary. So those are the three things that I would really like to hear about what's going on and be informed so that we can also prepare how to work with you to respond to not just the fair market, but the non-compliance issue and the rent arrears that's in the appraisal and these other things that are confusing because of what I just shared. I tried to be as succinct as possible. I appreciate everybody's time.
You have any response, or I got a couple of things. Well, let me, first of all, to my knowledge, y'all have never been delinquent.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, that's a fact. The second issue with the lease amount, one of the challenges that we're having is, besides what the FAA has there, but with respect to the rent, was we don't know if the original rent with the European rally was even fair market value of what the FAA required, because that's way before any of us were ever here. So we're inheriting a lot of things that had been in place prior to us. Our issue now is the issues that Mr. Taylor just addressed that we have to address with the FAA. And just so everyone knows, as a sponsor that receives federal funding from the FAA, there are grant assurances that we have to comply with. And as a result, we want to continue to comply with those so we can continue to get those monies for projects that we have going on at the airport.
Which we completely understand.
Good.
However, if you guys signed off on a lease, which you guys approved, wouldn't you guys have already done an audit to figure out what you should be billing your tenants? Because that is what should have been done all along, and whether you inherited it or not, it's like we need to know what you believe we should be paying, because I'm sure you charge other tenants also and do rent increases. We never got an annual letter saying this is what we're using as the CPI, and yet you're saying we're not delinquent. So I hope we're not delinquent, and that would be wonderful, but we really would like the rent schedule. And I know when I came to the airport, I was told that it would be sent, but then there was a lot of confusion that you guys don't know what the rent schedule is because you can't remember what years you didn't do rent increases and things like that. But that doesn't have anything to do with the FAA. I mean, that's record keeping, and we understand there's a lot of changeover, and maybe you guys are trying to get your arms around the records, which is fine. But we would just like you to work with us and communicate with us to the best of your ability what you think our rent schedule should be and how you have been billing all of your tenants, not just us, based on that CPI. And to have a proper annual notice on all three leases separated so that you guys have clarity about what you think we owe, and we have clarity on what we know we should be paying you.
So the reason that you didn't receive a separate letter about any increase was because your lease contract already states that.
It
It's
doesn't, it says CPI.
It says 1.5%.
No, our other two leases, we have 3 leases.
Yes.
So 2 of the leases say that the rent increase is based on the CPI up to a max of 3%. So we would rely on the airport board to tell us what calculation they're using for the CPI to institute those rent increases.
Okay.
So we want to pay our rent increases per our lease agreement, but without having the airport communicate, this is the CPI we're using, or, hey, we're going to use the 3% or whatever, we don't know.
So
Does that make sense though? I mean, can we just like stay focused on like,
I hear
we
what
want to
you're
make
saying.
sure that every year the airport communicates what CPI they're using, so we know that we're paying the right amount, and you also know we're paying the right amount, right? This is the calculation, this is how much you owe.
Basically what source the airport derives the CPI from.
And what it is.
Reporting source.
What it is. So in tenant, you know, like, so I deal with
Well, the
leases.
CPI is published.
I understand, but there's different ways you can calculate it, and it's also up to 3%. So we don't want to guess. We want to pay the correct amount, and we want you all to tell us how you derived at that and what the amount will be, so we can pay the correct amount. And maybe that's why the appraiser was confused, because he said that we weren't paying the right amount, but you all have said that we are paying the right amount, because maybe the appraiser didn't know that some years you guys didn't do rent increases. So this is just a record-keeping thing that I think is together we can work through to the best of our ability and say, okay, moving forward, this is how we're going to do this, and have it be visible and just get a notice prior to our rent being due, like maybe 60 days ahead of time, and just have that communication piece. Because I think, again, a lot of changeover, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, right? Like, these are just the facts, as you pointed out. The fact is, it sounds like you guys don't really know, but we're the tenant, and we really would like to know.
We do know.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, is that
And
something you guys can send over?
So let me ask you this, and we got 2 lawyers here that can confirm it, but it's my understanding that your other 2 leases, the Baja and the gun range, so once those expired, they were lumped in
Under the
with
umbrella, yeah.
with your 285 acre lease. So those terms for the duration. So that's why, as far as a CPI, it reverts back to that 1.5%.
So are you saying, and so this is very helpful, I know we're sidetracking, but are you saying the Baja lease and the range lease are now 1.5? It was my understanding that
Yes.
no matter what, those are all CPI and those always go up.
That was
And just so you know what happened to us,
It fell under the
you
original.
can imagine my concern when I saw that appraisal. I saw that paragraph, I raised alarms, I think this needs to be addressed immediately. We need to take off the table any thought at all that we're in arrears, we've never gotten any notice of anything. And so obviously it was embarrassing, 1. And 2, we weren't sure what to do, but we said, hey, let's take the maximum amount. So we paid 3% every single year. We wanted to make sure we did right by you all. We really value and appreciate the relationship we have with you all. And the thought that we were in arrears, obviously that was an issue. We want to make sure, we have you all covered. We got that paid. And then obviously when we got that, it's probably a standard notice that we're going to put on, right? Again, or that we owed this month. Obviously, we've paid that, and I'm assuming you can confirm that money was received. We're not in delinquent, at all with any money that's owed the 26,000.
Mr. Bunn, if I
Yeah,
may.
sure, please.
I don't want there to be any surprises here. As Mr. Kirkland said, and as I had understood, the airport doesn't consider that the firm is delinquent in its monthly rent payments.
Fantastic.
We have this issue about fair market rent overarching everything at this point, but, so the airport's position is not that the rent payments are in default, or that there's any arrears. And in fairness to the appraiser, Mr. Albright, all he did was take the starting lease amount and just run 1.5% all the way through the succeeding 25 years to get to the number he came up with. So, and that was just for purposes of providing a factual background, because the actual rent being paid had nothing to do with his appraisal, of course.
But it's not factual, and the FAA is seeing that we're not paying the correct
I
amount.
don't think the FAA took it that way either, in any event.
But we don't know that, that's all I'm saying, that's why we're here to ask these questions, because we don't know how people are taking things, we're just getting,
I can't speak for the FAA, I didn't read it that way.
right, but we're getting these
But because-
non-compliance notices, right?
My point
Yeah.
was, because the airport doesn't consider the firm to be in default of its rent payments, the tender check has not been accepted, and I've been asked to return it because we don't consider there's an arrearage, and we don't accept advance rent payments, so we want that to come back, so that we don't have, that just becomes another issue, is how we should apply that money, when we don't contend that there's any arrearage to apply it to.
Well, if I could, I would like the board's support here tonight on record in front of everybody, that you all support what was contractually agreed upon for our rent amount. We obviously, we have big plans for the firm. We have big plans for the airport. We want to incorporate you on some very, very big things, multi-year things that we want to do. Obviously, we just need to know, do we have a track? Fundamental. You know, we have sent notice that we intend to renew, but if we don't have a track, that's a serious problem. So I'm saying the
I'm going to
obvious.
speak for the board if I may at this
sure,
point, to
sure,
respond
please.
specifically to your invitation.
Sure.
The airport is, and always has been, willing and determined to abide by the terms of the lease. And the terms of the lease
Thank you.
include the provision that subjects all of it to FAA approval and requires both parties, landlord and tenant, to modify the lease as required based upon FAA approval. And that's our challenge now, is we have to respond to the FAA because they're going to tell us something. Whatever it is they wind up telling us, we're going to have to do, both landlord and tenant. All they've done so far is to say we have a potential non-compliance.
I appreciate you expressing that support. Obviously, we have contracts that we're entering into that we are going to be on the hook and very serious. And obviously, the time's running out, you know, so we obviously just need to be able to plan. I appreciate you bringing us into the discussion. One thing I was very much hoping to accomplish tonight is that we could be part of the dialogue, part of the discussion, and you confirm that. I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate the support.
In terms of the time frame, if I may,
Yeah.
and I think I'm just echoing what Mr. Fryer and Mr. Kirkland said a moment ago. I think the FAA will be satisfied if we respond on or before March 24 by assuring the FAA that we're taking these areas of potential noncompliance seriously and that we're doing what we can to engage with the tenant, the firm, to propose a resolution that we hope can be a joint resolution that the FAA will accept as confirming that we're in compliance. And I don't think we need to have seen that dialogue through to fruition by the 24th of March, but I think we need to demonstrate to the FAA that we're taking it seriously and that we are working diligently to come up with a response that we can ask the FAA to approve as showing compliance.
Thank you very much. Also, depending on the time frame, if it takes us a little while to work through this and work out something that's amicable, obviously we have an issue if the FAA comes back later on and says, you can't use your track. So we need to work out something so again, we can work together somehow. I don't want to be tied to a lease deadline. Okay, we gave notice here, but the FAA still hasn't come back because they're, corner heels trying to figure out what we can do.
I didn't mean to isolate the third issue to the exclusion of the first two. It's just I can't address the aeronautical and airport use issues. I think Mr. Prang's going to have to be involved in that, and Mr. Kuhn, and perhaps even Mr. Fryer, perhaps others. But we certainly intend to address all three issues at the same time.
And that's the reason at the workshop, because the board hasn't seen some of the graphics that Mr. Prang has provided for us in preparation for this, is some actual Google Earth shots that reflects where the track is. And it's not a runway intrusion, it's actually a runway protection zone. So that's a little different. And so
How is that different? When you say that, what do you mean? I'd like to understand.
okay, so the runway is the physical asphalt section that an aircraft would land and take off on. Beyond each end of the runway, there's a designated runway protection zone, an RPZ. And what we've seen from the FAA, actually that provided the document, the graphic, is that the northern portion of your track intrudes into the RPZ.
Okay.
So there's some options there that Craig and I have been talking about of just trying to sort out, well, you know, well, what if we did this, or what if the firm did that? Because there's some other FAA requirements with respect to the RPZ as far as things that are vertically, their height, and that's associated in that area. Obviously, your cars are not really tall. So what we're hoping to do is come back with an option that says to the FAA, all right, here's what the firm is doing. They have a safety person out there when they're racing. These are small cars. Just put it out there and ask what the leeway might be from the FAA. So that's one of the discussions that we can have in the workshop, because we'll have those graphics and it will visually be easier to understand when we do that.
Is it, when they signed off on the plan, did the FAA, do you think maybe they just didn't notice or take note of this, or did they change staff?
I don't know the answer, but let me say, you mentioned this, I think you called it a historical issue. And if by that, the implication was that it was something we knew about before, and Mr. Kirkland can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is those two areas of potential non-compliance identified by the FAA, you were surprised to see it, we were too.
Perfect.
Sounds great.
So you understand our shock, and you're in shock too.
I don't know if I would call it shock, but it's
Well,
certainly.
maybe it's shocking to us, because racetracks, to tear up a racetrack and build it anew, it's very
concern
expensive.
because after all these years, that something that's been in existence for quite a while, it might be non-compliant.
It's kind of fait accompli at this point. Track is there, it's been in use, and what's changed now versus last 10 years or whatever. So,
Right.
again, appreciate very much your support. We want to give you our support. We want to help you any way we can work through this. So we have a great relationship. We want to do that. Like I said, we have a lot of great plans for the airport in the future. We're excited to work with you, and we're excited to be part of this. Thank you for even suggesting the workshop.
Well, I'd like to ask you to comment, you or Lorraine, one, how'd the event go this weekend? Tell us about the event.
I'm gonna let Raul tell the event, because he literally camped out on site for 3 days to make it possible, as well as Bryn, who can't be here tonight because he's exhausted from so much teaching.
So this event is something that's been going on at the firm for the past 3 years, and every year it has grown. I believe that listed said by 20%. And the crowds, especially Saturday.
So, well, excuse me, so for everybody that doesn't know what was going on, what kind of event was it?
Oh, yeah. So it's called well, it's not called the Overland Expo, but if you don't know what an Overland Expo is overlanding is an event that happens pretty much around the world, where people buy vehicles that they take their whole families and they go camping, they stay out in the wilderness, they, tread lightly. If you ever seen that sign, tread lightly means, if you step on it, yeah, fix it up. If you drop it, pick it up. Whatever you walk in with, you walk out with it. So, excuse me. So you got vendors that bring their equipment in to sell to the public, and they had 180 vendors.
I know, she told me they had 180 that signed up.
Yeah, but only 120 vendors were actually allowed to show up. And it's, their biggest thing is to preserve the environment, and like camping out and keeping things running clean. But this event is done also in Arizona, North Carolina, and I believe it's now taken off in Utah area as well. But Alyssa is one individual, where the other ones are big corporations that are running it. And she is, I don't even know how to put it, but she's like a pit bull. She's gotten a hold of this, and she's made it her own, and she's super passionate about it. And
how many people attended?
so we estimated the Saturday alone, was 5,000 people that was on the property. It was families.
It's bigger than Jupiter. The coronavirus, this is definitely bigger than the coronavirus now.
I can elaborate a little bit too, because I put your flyer, I didn't actually put it on the airport Facebook, but it's called Southeast Adventure Vehicle Expo. And what I would call it for any of us older people, if we ever watched the Mad Max movies, some of these campers look like they're Unimogs or something. They're like military bases or whatever, but a lot of these guys, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we think of RVing, we go into an RV park with a swimming pool. These people boondock, they go out in the wilderness, and they take their vehicles, and like you say, they try not to damage the environment, but they are off the grid when they're camping. Correct. And there were some amazing vehicles coming in, a lot of Jeeps and unusual. And she does do a good job. We helped her bring some of the semis in for Yamaha, brought them through here because they didn't think they could make it up the grade up there on their gate, but it's getting bigger each year.
Yeah, I attended on Saturday also and got a chance to meet with Alyssa because she was my point of contact for the emergency responders. And I appreciate the fact she stopped out of her busy day just so we could actually make face-to-face contact. And she told me then that she had thought that they exceeded what they thought their maximum was before. So she seemed to be pretty excited. So, and it was impressive. That's exactly the way I described it. I was thinking walking around looking at these vehicles. I was like, if the world ended, these people here would be able to survive.
Yep, some of them really got some money invested.
Now, I do have a question real quick before we get too far away from this, because I know we're talking about doing a workshop, but I do have some questions that I believe are pertinent to what we're talking about right now, as well as because we have both lawyers present as well as board members here. If I may be able to address those, or do I need to wait and save that for the workshop?
I'd like to address them now.
I mean, I would love to hear your input, yeah.
Okay. The first thing I would like to ask that I have a concern about, that I believe that we all should discuss as a board, and it has to do with the lease. Prior to us making the vote for the appraisal, for the expiring of the lease, and again, this may be behind the eight ball, I don't know, but maybe that can be discussed here. The information we were given as a board is that this was a lease that was set to expire in May of this year. It was a 25-year lease. That was the only information we had. And that sounded like, yes, we do need to have an appraisal if that's the case. Well, after this thing is kickstarted and started to move forward, then we realized after the fact that there were other terms allotted in that lease. And I don't know about any other board members here, but until our board discussion last month was the first time that came out verbally that I'm aware of, that there were two more extensions to the original lease. There was the 15-year extension and then followed up by a 10-year extension at the desire of the leasee. Having that information up front before we took the vote in November for the appraisal, I think would have made a huge difference as far as at least we would have talked about it and had a discussion about it. And I think that's important. I don't know if that changes as far as from a legal standpoint, if that means it doesn't matter because the original first 25 years was coming up, then things were going to have to go in and be evaluated. That part I don't know. I know there's terms that are involved, like fair market value, subordinate, extension, renewal, non-aeronautical use. I understand that's legal terms that I don't know. But I do think it's important the fact that us as board members should have had all that information. And this is not just me being me, wanting this. This is every board member here should be thinking the exact same thing. Before we sit down and take a vote on anything, we should have that information in front of us. That lease was not a part of our agenda. That lease was not attached to our agenda. The information had just only been given to us verbally as far as it's a 25-year lease set to expire at the end of May. That was the only information we have, unless any other board member can state that they had that information. I would like to know.
I'm having problems following.
Well, the thing is,
Wait a minute.
what I like to mention is all of this, having that appraisal done really is appropriate and evaluating everything as far as a lease renewal.
Well, it's more than that. The appraisal is required. That's why we had to have the appraisal done. Because as Mr. Taylor alluded to, any renewal of a lease has to be approved by the FAA. We knew that they were going to require, and there's specifics, and Craig can get that to you.
No, I've seen some of that.
Okay, so there's specifics there that we have to comply with in order to help determine that fair market value.
Right, and the thing is, I understand, and because again, I have seen, and I appreciate that, because that was what I required at our last meeting, because I wanted, as all of us as a board should have had that information too, to know what the FAA requires, the information on fair market value, that type of stuff. But what I'm talking about is in this, I understand what they say that the FAA requires fair market value. Does that also include a lease that's written that way, that has 25 years, 15 years, 10 years, or is that only a lease that says, okay, this is like a 5-year lease, 10-year lease, whatever, and then it stops there, and if the tenant wants to continue on, then you sit down and you renegotiate a new lease? That's what I'm asking is this, are we looking at what was essentially a 50-year lease, but we're basically jumping in the middle of it right then before the next 25 years kicks, and is that right? And that's where I'm trying to, because I'm not trying to take one side or the other, but I think all of us as board members and everybody here at this table or in this room needs to know that and feel comfortable with that decision, especially for those of us that have to vote on these issues.
Can I share my?
I was going to say, I'm going to ask Mr. Taylor to address the 25-year lease.
I can only represent this as my understanding of how the FAA interprets its own rule and policy. The way I read the rule and policy regarding fair market value rental rate is that the FAA expects that at any given time during the term of any particular lease, whether it's 1 year or 25 years or 50 years, not just at the outset and at the conclusion, but at every point in between, the FAA expects that the rent that's charged during the term of the lease will always be fair market value rent.
So I have a question. So how many appraisals did you order? So I understood a lot of the leases, you have a lot of leases.
None to my knowledge.
So you didn't do this for all the other leases that were up for renewal? Because I know that there's a lot of leases and a lot of them were up for renewal. So did you apply the same standard to all those leases or just ours?
What all leases do you know are up for renewal?
Well,
How would you know
I've
that?
been listening to, because I've been watching the city meetings, but I don't understand why.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I've been watching the city meetings to educate myself because I'm not familiar with how any of this works. My background and my familiarity is with.
Who are the leases though?
It said in the last meeting that I watched for the city council that there were a lot of leases and the city council members were asking to look at the leases. So that's how I heard that there's like.
Oh, that was where you just reviewed the language in the leases, I think.
I know, but my question is, there's other airport leases, correct?
So our T-hanger leases. Okay, those are leases that typically are an annual type lease.
Okay.
So they renew automatically. So those don't require, because they're in a T-hanger or a bulk hanger, that type of appraisal. I will tell you that for the, excuse me, I will tell you that for the Sportsman's Club, okay, another large tenant, land leasee, that we have had appraisals done when those leases were renewed. So you aren't first, okay? It's just part of this compliance that we're having to do with this one.
Well, so you have ordered other appraisals for the other tenants? And and forgive me, where does it say that the FAA says these leases automatically renew with these leases?
Shouldn't this all be handled in the workshop? I mean, I know you want to know things.
Maybe.
But now we're having the workshop.
But, well, maybe, yeah, I mean, the problem is that I think our questions are very basic questions, and I have tried to call, and we have sent letters, and we have tried to get answers. And so we came tonight because we didn't understand why some of our very simple questions weren't being answered, because we do want to understand.
Well, I haven't spoken much, but let me just say this, if I may, real quick.
Hang on, let Mr. Taylor respond, please.
I was interrupting you, Mr.
Well, I just want to say, I've always advocated for y'all. Craig will tell you that, Marie will tell you that. I've always wanted the firm to remain here. But you've got an attorney sitting right there. He advises you, don't talk about this, don't talk about that.
Wait, I'm sorry, where is this coming from?
I'm just
We're
talking about, no, you're saying you're calling over here, you're trying to find out answers, and I understand your frustration. But we have counsel that advises us. I don't think there's anything secret here. That's why we want to do the workshop, I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, Craig may not have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. These discoveries we're making, they're news to us too. We're not at all against y'all. And it feels, I'm getting this feeling that we're already adversaries, and we're not. I've come over and helped y'all many times. We've given y'all asphalt millings. We've given you concrete spools, these culverts.
I think we've
We
done
do
lots
things
of
to
stuff.
work together, haven't we? We've done very well.
But I will say that all of that aside, which I completely agree with, the millings we used for the airport road so that,
A road that we don't need, you need.
well, it's an egress road. That's
It
part
is,
of our
but you're the only
lease.
one over there right now, other than the RC Club.
Okay, well,
Can I address
but
the
hang on
point?
one second. But I do want to say, it seems like you're getting agitated, and I apologize for that. I just want to say that the reason why we're asking so many questions tonight is because we have made good faith efforts to have some of these questions answered.
And
what I hear you say,
we've responded when we could.
what I hear you say, well, I have gotten no response. So I got no response. I was told that the check, this is the first I've heard that you're going to give it back to us. Everything that I've learned tonight has been really helpful, but this is the first time that I've gotten any communication. No one has picked up the phone, not you or anyone, to say, hey, we're working on this. Here's what's going on.
Ma'am, I can't call you. You have a lawyer.
Okay, well, before we had a lawyer, I was asking questions and I couldn't get answers.
I'm talking about me. I can't call you because I have to communicate through your lawyer.
I'm open to any time.
And our employees do the same thing.
Let me say one
I
thing.
think for me, it feels adversarial because the communication and transparency has not been there. And I just want to put that on the record, that I came to the last board meeting and that I did ask questions. And when the appraiser came on site, Scott, I was asking questions. There was no lawyer. It was you and I talking. I said what my concerns were, and I asked for some clarity so that I can understand how all of this works. And I'm letting you know, me personally, as Lorena, just a citizen and also, just a person here as a member of the public, I have tried very hard since December, and this appraiser came over during a military course, which frankly, I really felt uncomfortable with, and I said I felt uncomfortable with that, but I felt really pressured into letting him come right in the middle of military training when that was a violation of our military contract. Wait. I had to get Raul to ask special permission to violate the terms of our contract to let that appraiser come. So I felt really pressured, and I continue to feel a lot of pressure. I'm just sharing this to do things that I don't feel comfortable with, and then not to be given information that I ask about. And so that's why I asked the president to come and help me, not necessarily as our in-house legal counsel, but because he's the president of the firm and I feel I need support. Because I don't want to do anything that hurts my employer. And I'm not able to get the information I need to do my job, and that's very scary. I don't want to lose my job. And I'm sure Craig doesn't want to lose his job, and he's brand new. And I don't have any adversarial feelings towards Craig. But if he's not the point of contact and he's not allowed to talk to me all the way back from December, and he doesn't understand what's going on, he doesn't understand what our rent is, he doesn't know how much we're supposed to be paying, he doesn't know why the appraisal gave the wrong amount, that's a lot of information that is scary and muddy. That's all I want to say, and then I won't talk anymore. And I appreciate you having the patience to hear me out, but I've been holding this in since December, and it's been really stressful for me. This is my job. I'm an employee. This is my job, okay? Just know that.
Mr. Taylor, would you like to comment? Okay.
And can I please add to that? Because I understand where she's coming from. And me, as a board member, and this was the second part. So the first part was what I just addressed a second ago with the lease. In questioning and the information as far as why all this, because that's what kickstarted this whole thing, was the fact that the first 25 years was coming to this. And then we had this appraisal that we voted on, not knowing the entirety of the
Not knowing what,
lease. The entirety of the terms
That it
of
was
the
like a renewal
existing
thing,
lease.
or- okay.
Would that have changed your idea though on the appraisal
Okay, well,
though?
if it.
Would it have changed your
We would
mind?
have had these discussions at that time, and it possibly would have, if we had to have legal people come in and tell us, yes, it doesn't matter anyways, this is what we have to do, then that would have made me feel comfortable and potentially If anybody else had questions, it would have made them feel comfortable. But the next thing I want to hit on is real quick is the compliance issues that all of a sudden are now a problem, because I understand where you're coming from. For the last year that I've been a part of this board, I've not heard one negative compliance issue related anything to the firm. We've not had a vote on any compliance issues. We've not had any discussions on compliance issues. The track situation and the gun range, which are listed in there as being the compliance in that letter, those have been in place for who knows how long. And my question is, it was brought up in our last meeting that you can go back 15 years and see that the track was in place there in the RPZ area. This isn't something that just happened yesterday, but now all of a sudden it's an issue, you know. And why is all of a sudden now the FAA is got their target set on this with the timing of this with the lease and everything else that's involved? Because we have FAA inspections. Can somebody tell me how often the FAA inspection is done at the airport?
That's a DOT annual inspection.
Right, but does the FAA do any inspections here at all? Is it only just DOT?
Very occasionally.
Okay, well, I was part of that DOT inspection, as we all know, and I appreciate that, right, and I very much appreciate that. Right.
He didn't mention anything about that track.
And the thing is we were down there on that end, we even talked about it, and he's like, wow, you know, look at there's cars coming around, you know, and we all talked about it. There was no mention of that. Where the mention was, and I brought this up in our last meeting, and I said, with the DOT, would that be something? And it was said, no, they don't care about side to side, it's more the glide path. Well, there was an issue. It was brought up here in this meeting.
No, that's not true.
That's.
The RPZ is a funnel shape.
Right, I know what it is, but you go back, you can see the video, and
I don't know who told you that.
You can go back to last month. Now, hang on, don't cut me off on this, I just want to finish this up, okay? He did have a problem with an encroachment on that runway, not on runway 11 end down there near the firm. He did on the opposite end, same piece of pavement on runway 29 on that end where there were some trees and some bushes that were going in, and he documented that, and the field staff here, the maintenance staff took care of it like within the next couple of days. Okay, but that was coming in from the side, just like the track is, but the track wasn't mentioned. And that's where, again, it's like all of a sudden now we have these compliance issues, you know, and the FAA breathing down our neck, and DOT didn't complain about it. FAA's not said anything before, but all of a sudden the timing on all this. And I feel for these people because I understand they've been here for a while. And as far as I've always known in the last year, they've been a good tenant, you know, and now we're having these type of.
Nobody's saying they're not, but here's what's different. There's two things. Google Earth didn't exist in '99, I'll bet you. I don't know when it was paved, but back in the day, they used to do aerial surveys with airplanes. They used to take pictures. Now we got Google Earth. We got eyes all over the sky. That's one thing. The other thing is none of the board members that are on here were on that board back when this was done. Just because you find out something is broken doesn't mean you just ignore it.
Nobody's saying
it doesn't seem fair
it's
in
right
some
now,
ways to me
it's all
either.
hot and heavy, and that's
But that's why we're
wait. FAA is getting brought into this. Now
this is why we're going to have a workshop to work through this and see what we can do to make it work. We don't want you to go away.
And like the letter said potential.
Yeah.
But the comp plan that the FAA approved, it was in there.
It's not a comp plan, it's a master plan.
Okay, thank you for correcting me
Sure.
and helping me understand the correct terms. Because again, this isn't my wheelhouse.
Sure.
So the FAA signed off on that. That was in 2016. Was it the same board or a different board then?
What did they sign off on?
Different. Yeah, what did they sign off on?
You just said the title is the master plan.
Well, that's the master plan. That's a scope of what's going to happen in the future in 5-year increments.
You're referring to is from 2016, because that's the one that's in the letter that the FAA sent
Okay,
back.
because
I saw
I was-
that same
because
number.
I was-
So in 2016 would be the one.
It was shared with me, and I don't remember if Maria shared it with Bryn shared it with me, or Bryn and I came over here at a board meeting. It doesn't matter how I know. I don't know that I need to prove every time why I know something, but it was shared that the maps and everything were given to the FAA. And so I'm just using logic and what Jim was talking about in terms of facts. It was a known fact then. Now, I'm not an expert on a board for an airport that is savvy on FAA guidelines or regulations, or, you know, your master plan and all these, like, it's very, you probably have to educate yourself a lot and learn a lot and read the API handbook and some of the other things that I've tried to read to get a little educated because I don't want to waste your time and ask really silly questions. But using logic, it was there. There was Google Earth in 2016. It was this board in 2016, and the track was right there in the RPZ zone, and yet we were never given any type of notice. So that's all I'm saying. This is not new information for the board, or
We just got caught.
And that was gonna be the question.
Well,
Has any-
somebody-
There's humans involved, there's humans involved.
but who got caught?
If the FAA didn't catch it then, they didn't catch it, but they've caught it now, and we've
Okay.
got to deal with it now.
Okay, let me go back, just so that there's a sequence of events. So the 2016 document was an update of our ALP, the Airport Layout Plan. That included projects that had been completed previously to that date on the airport, and the FAA requires that our ALP be updated to reflect that. So, but back to Mr. Ludwig's comment or question, so this all came about because we knew the lease was coming up for renewal. We knew that we had to submit that to the FAA for their review, so that's what Mr. Kuhn did. And in that process, as they started looking at that, they found these issues. So it's all new.
But Maria told me something about in the plan that there was some type of thing, but I didn't understand what she was saying at the time. So Maria knew. Did she not communicate with the board? I mean,
I can't answer for Maria, and I don't know what she was talking about, but what I just told you are the facts with respect to our ALP and that 2016 date and what was updated there. Again, I can't speak for the FAA because, again, I don't know if they designate some FAA employee to say, okay, you know, really comb through this. If you've ever looked at the ALP, it is daunting with all of the information that's on it. So, like I said, I can't speak for them. They didn't question it then. And it only came about as a result of, again, making them aware that we have this big lease that we definitely want to renew. And here's what we've got right now. Here's what the appraisal is. And so as a result, we have these three items that we've got to address, and we want to get them addressed and get them resolved.
I think we also want to, I appreciate you including us because I feel that we would want to advocate for ourselves also.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And make sure that they understand, hey, we've never been delinquent. Hey, that appraiser, you know, there's more pertinent information that it sounds like the appraiser did not get that I feel does affect the fair market value. And I just want to go back to you, Jim, because you said that you didn't want to say anything, but I hope that you're not frustrated with me, that I'm just trying to educate and, you know, have an opportunity to express how it feels for our side and that I have tried to get communication. So I would like to hear from you.
And please know that you're more than happy to talk to her. You have my permission. Also, if I can we get a copy of whatever the communication was that went to the FAA to tell them about this? We have this big lease renewal or what have you, whatever that communication was, anything that was in writing, can we get copies of that?
Think you had already emailed
Full picture.
some of that?
Check, yeah.
We'll check.
Sounds great.
Sure. Absolutely, we can make that available.
We appreciate the relationship. I think this is good policy dialogue. You have to understand, we have literally sitting here right now, we have millions of dollars on the line with contracts we're thinking about, what have you. We have to make, you know, grown-up decisions like you all do.
Sure.
We have to, then, things that affect a lot of people's lives. So I very much appreciate everybody's input. I very much appreciate yours, everybody. We all want to work together. We want to work through this and have a positive relationship going forward. I appreciate that.
All right, so, Mr. Legwood, let me ask you this. Since we will have attorney representation at the workshop, you want to hold the rest of your questions for that to discuss?
That was pretty much the two things, is questioning, you know, would that make a difference as far as us knowing the entirety of the lease? And then also the compliance issues, just why now all of a sudden? You know, did the FAA come here and physically inspect things, or did we let them know somehow?
We notified them of the lease renewal coming up.
I'm talking about the compliance issues that are now, that's why the FAA is
No, we just got the letter, so we have 30 days to comply.
We didn't point out these things. The FAA
Right.
told us these things.
So they just noticed out of
All he had to do was tell them we've got a lease coming up. That's all he did.
Yeah.
That's it.
We didn't go find these things. Y'all know that, right?
If I can.
We didn't know they existed.
I think we're learning as we, yeah, I think we're
Yeah,
learning
this will
as
be
we
good in the
go.
workshop, really.
If I can, I'm just gonna answer. How did the FAA know the lease was coming in? I think.
We have to notify them. He's told you
informed
that.
Okay.
We're required to.
I'm just wondering how. Was it email? Was it letter?
The FAA
it was
is the
email.
Federal Aviation Administration. It's a federal entity.
Yeah.
We had to tell them.
Well, we understand that, so you guys, every single lease that you have here, you
Not
notify.
every single, like you said with the T-hangers, but this is better in the workshop, Lorena. I mean, we're just beating
Yeah,
this
we're-
horse dead, and we want to work with you. That's why you're invited.
Well, I think that these are good questions, and I'm glad that they're being put on the record. So it would be great if we could say, hey, here's the appraisal that we ordered for these other leases. I don't know who all your leases are, but
I shared that, I answered that already.
was that about it?
What's pertinent now is the appraisal for the firm.
And moving forward.
Well,
And
what's
moving,
pertinent
and
for-
getting a
What's
resolution
pertinent
for you
me,
guys.
In all due respect, what's pertinent for me is just to understand the application and that it's applied to everyone the same. And that I understand what that application is. That's what's pertinent to me,
Okay.
which I think is very fair and
Let me
reasonable.
suggest that if these, whatever the airport has, almost everything the airport has is public record. If you want to make a public record request, make it. But make it in writing.
I think I am making it publicly on video. This is my,
You need to put it in writing under chapter 119, and Mr. Kuhn or somebody else on behalf of the airport will respond.
So-
I just think that this dialogue is not what is really contemplated in a board public meeting, and that's why the suggestion was made, let's do this in a workshop. And frankly and respectfully, we've got to deal with the legal issues here in responding to the FAA. And very little of the concerns you expressed, and I'm not saying they're not valid concerns, but none of them translate into legal issues that have anything to do with the airport's response to the FAA.
And I don't understand what you just said. I think everything we've talked about here, in all due respect, has.
The only thing that's relevant legally, and the only thing that's relevant to the FAA is this lease, and are we compliant or not compliant in the three different respects that the FAA has noticed a potential non-compliance. That's it.
I mean, has there been any discussion of the fact that the lease exists? These are the terms, and this should be kept the same. Has there been any discussions with the FAA?
The FAA is very aware of that. We've given them the lease. Yep. All right, we're going, Mr. Van Zandt.
Could I just make one point of order here? If you hear something that you don't think is correct, you're obligated to do something with it. And I don't know Mr. Taylor that well, but I do know that Florida Public Records Law, if somebody walks in City Hall and says, I want a copy of the meeting minutes, they don't have to give me their name. They can say, would they be ready today or next week? And all I have to tell them is, if you'll come by after 3 this afternoon, we'll have a printed copy. I don't ask their name. They don't have to email me. So but as a city manager and a guy that's done government for 30-something years, you are understandably concerned about your job. I've had many places in my life where I was concerned about where my next paycheck and how I was going to pay the mortgage and feed my kids and all that. But it would help Mr. Kuhn a lot. You did make all these in public. It's on YouTube. You can never get it back. But if a simple bulletized email, since you're not trying to maintain anonymity, that would help Mr. Kuhn and his staff of 2 people to prepare for this workshop that's coming up in a little over a week.
Absolutely.
So that,
Thank you very much.
just for some clarity maybe.
And I appreciate everybody's contribution tonight to the subject. It's something that, again, I just want to reiterate, we don't want to lose any tenants. We don't want to lose the firm. We want to come up with a resolution, and that's good for everybody involved. So, all right, we'll look forward to the workshop. Moving on, I have 3 resolutions. that we need to pass related to FDOT funding, and we're going to do them individually. So we will need a motion to approve and to move forward. The first one is Resolution 2024-02. It's a resolution. Basically, what we're doing is accepting a public transportation grant agreement from the Florida Department of Transportation. And this particular grant is FP number 445982-1-94-24. And that is for the rehabilitation and expansion of the bulk fuel storage and related self-service components. The KAA is eligible for and has requested a Rural Economic Development Initiative waiver pursuant to Florida Statute 288.0656. And this is for our bulk fuel storage project.
I'll make a motion that we accept resolution 2024-02 for the bulk fuel farm.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It's unanimous. The second one that I bring to you is Resolution 2024-03. Again, it's a public transportation grant. I'll read to you by the FP number and then a description of the grant. It's FP number 441158-4-94-24. It's the upgrade and installation of an up-to-date security cameras and related infrastructure, including wireless bridging and software. And again, the KAA is eligible for ready funding.
Make a motion that we accept resolution 2024-03 for upgrade of security camera system.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The last one is Resolution 2024-04. Again, it's a public transportation grant agreement fully funded by the Florida Department of Transportation. FP number 441158-3-94-24. That is purchase and installation of a land clearing tractor attachment for perimeter fence maintenance. And again, we fall under the ready status and qualifying for that as well.
I make a motion that we accept resolution 2024-04 for tractor attachments.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right,
Aye.
Mr. Seymour, second. Mr. Fryer made the motion. Any questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. That takes care of that item on my agenda. The next item is a requirement to complete Form 1 before July the 1st for all of our board members. I also included in the agenda the Florida Commission on Ethics, and then there's a link there for going there for the financial disclosure, and you can get that form at that location. And I also included a Florida statute that defines the local officers, and I checked with Mr. Commando at the city just to verify, as well as Mr. Taylor, and our board does qualify to fill out Form 1. All right?
And turn that into who? Sorry.
When you do it online.
Oh, it'll do it automatically.
It just does it automatically.
And can I ask, what is Form 1? Is that on the ethics or is that on something separate?
It's basically a form.
This ethics training?
No,
Right?
no.
No?
You gotta unveil yourself. We had a lot of people not run for city council because they had to fill out an even more intrusive form, which was Form 6.
Right.
Form 1 is like a lighter version of that you're gonna have to put down all your vital statistics,
Oh,
Yeah.
your
It's a bunch
bank
of-
balance, your
Okay.
income source, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what I was wondering, Form 6.
You can't get richer while you're serving out here.
Yeah. Also, I don't know, I've tried that link on there and it comes up, it says server not found. It won't do anything. So I don't know
Greg, let's find another, let's check that out and get a different link.
Yep.
All right, moving on to my next item. I attended the Keystone Heights Centennial meetings, and Mr. Van Zant was there as well this last month. And one of the things that the committee has asked is if they could hold an event here at the airport on December the 31st, 2024. It would be from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. for families, and then 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. for adults. I shared with them that I would have to bring that to the board for their approval prior to me going back and making a commitment to the Centennial Group. There was a couple of locations that we were talking about. One was possibly here on the Apron. They would have, some of the nicer covered tents, enclosed tents. It's December, it could be cold. They would have the heaters. One of the other options that I was thinking about is right over here. We have 2 pads, from old barracks. The only thing that we would need to get over here would be power, which wouldn't be that difficult. So, but overall, I wanted to bring that to the board for your thoughts, comments.
You say they were gonna.
Can you share what kind of activity event they were looking at hosting?
It's more of a gathering to start the celebration, because January 1, 2025 through that whole year, there's going to be several other events occurring besides the normal events that the city is involved with different entities. So specifically out here, they haven't hammered those details out yet. They're just trying to get the basics now about, okay, can we have the event here? When they first asked me about it, they said, well, can we do fireworks? I said, no.
Right.
I'm sure fireworks would not go well. No. So I knew we had no firefighters on the board, and just that wasn't going to work. So mainly what they're asking is, would we be agreeable to host that event on that date?
There's lots of landside area available to.
Yeah, like to give them essentially a
Yes.
location.
Right.
Yeah.
How many people are they expecting, or do you have any idea, Charlie?
Oh, good Lord, no. They're trying to entice families to come out. They'll advertise. You might have a couple hundred people on the outside. That's just Charlie's wild guess.
I'm talking about setting up tables and chairs, or what's the?
Well, they haven't, that's why I said they haven't
They just need the
finalized those
venue.
details.
Okay.
They just need a venue
Okay.
first, and then as they go forward with all of the planning, then we'll
And
have
they'll
that
figure out all those
information.
details. I would agree to it, yeah.
Yeah.
If we do it on the
Land
old
side.
site out here, I have an 11 kW generator powered that I'd be glad to let them use.
The only thing about over there is some gopher holes, though, when we've had parking over there, they've had to,
Yeah.
I don't know how many people you're talking about
We
being
can
over
put a
there.
traffic cone on it, but we can get those details
Yeah.
worked
Yeah.
out.
That'd be
All right, I think we need a motion to approve
I'll
that.
make the motion.
So, Mr.
We
Seaver,
approve it for the gala event on the 31st, 2024, December.
I'll second.
all right, we have a motion second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries. Thank you. I'll report, we're meeting again this month, so we'll report that you guys have approved the venue. Well, just to update you that Craig had received from Doty Seelig from the Clay County Planning and Zoning Group a proposal for Clay Airport zoning. We went, Craig and I went through that. I believe he emailed it out actually to all the board members, so you've all seen it. There were 8 items that we officially responded back to Doty with our concerns. And I attended the Clay County Commissioner meeting that week, that it was going to be brought up, and then for public comment. So I made public comment that, we did have some concerns and that we'd expressed those in an email. Actually, it had been copied to Betsy Condon, our commissioner for Clay County in this area. She had sent it to Howard Wanamaker, the county manager. He in turn had distributed that to the commissioners, and so it was tabled that evening because not only did we have some concerns, there are Howler Airfield, some of the other private airstrips over in the Green Cove area. One guy had a concern about a heliport that was his next door neighbor. So they elected to table that and postpone that, go back in planning and zoning and revisit that, look at the concerns, and then they will be bringing it back to the commission for action with respect to airport zoning. All right, and as that gets more legs under it, I'll certainly bring the board up. We'll make sure we copy anything we get to you. Colonel, you had a
I
comment?
was just gonna say, we spoke to Doty today. I think they're gonna put that on the May agenda.
Okay. Very good. She had mentioned to us that possibly us getting together and,
Right, there's a piece of our northern piece on the skid strip up there on North Fork, as well as Keystone. Yes, sir.
right, yeah, that was listed in
Yes, sir.
all of the private strips. Yep, okay, very good. Update on the Florida State Guard. Craig and I will be meeting with representatives tomorrow here at the airport. We've had a couple of meetings with them previously, and basically to hear their interest in their presence here until they had gotten their green light to go out and actually purchase their aviation resources. They didn't know exactly what kind of footprint they may need here, so we expect to hear from them tomorrow about that. And as a result, once those details are worked out, then we'll work out some details as far as lease, and then just move forward from there. So I just wanted to tell you that's in the mix, been in the mix for a couple of meetings, and tomorrow we look forward to hearing maybe some more definite plans that they have. All right. Okay, access road gate fence. I was going to bring up the fact that we needed to do a RFQ, but Craig got some good news, so I'm going to ask him to chime in here about the new gate and the fence and the good news we got from the FDOT today.
Yep, so we met with them very briefly, actually, just explained what the project was and what we're trying to do and the amount we needed, and it was actually a pretty simple process. They said, we want to do it. It's going to be this fiscal year.
So for our guests,
Yes.
Nice.
yeah, for our guests who aren't in the loop here, Bradford County had received a DEO grant 5 years ago to build a new road, access road on the west side that would eventually connect to State Road 100. One of the things that the county is waiting on is to have the airport move the fence so that they could connect where the road ends to State Road 100. They've gotten permission from DOT to do that, and so the ball was back in our court to move forward with trying to get that done. So we were initially thinking that we would have to do an RFQ. Mr. Prang had provided specifications on fence fabric that the FAA requires, gate openers, gates themselves. So, but Craig took this to Donna Whitney with the FDOT, our representative, and shared what our project was and got approval. So, yeah, $200,000, which will be great for the firm because there will be another access.
Great job.
So that's good news there.
You say it'll be funded this year?
This fiscal year, yes.
Yep, I spoke with Mr. Prang about it. He said that he will begin working and adding that to the JSA, the Joint Automated Construction Progress, and that he thought by June 1st we'd be able to go out for bids. It's not a big project, so it should turn around pretty quick and get that fence moved. The county builds the connecting part of that road to State Road 100, and we have an automated gate. Part of that resolution that you guys approved earlier, or that we approved earlier, was with that system, that bridging system for communicating, We wanted to be able to find out the status of that gate. So that's part of that program, to be able to have that capacity and ability. So it's a good thing. I mean, it was, wow, when Craig told me that this afternoon, I wanted to give him a high five.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
When you said the county, are you saying that we don't have to send out to bid for the road construction,
No, the county's doing that.
but we don't have to send out bid and get a 3-person bid on it?
No, it's a continuation of that project that when they built that access road, it's just a continuation of that to connect to State Road 100.
They were originally gonna do deceleration and turn lanes, but I believe Bradford asked, could they just connect it for now? I think the DOT will do further upgrades in the future.
Well, we've put an appropriations request in this year for that at both the existing entrance and the new entrance.
Okay.
We've not heard if the legislation approved that or not. But if they didn't, that's a project for next year that we'll start on earlier.
So this will just get it connected. It'll be just like turning the airport road now. You don't really have a deceleration lane. It's just the asphalt's connected where we can drive in from that entrance. And Bradford's got the money to pay for it.
And just so you know too, that gate will be like 500 feet in from State Road 100. What we wanted to make sure of, two things. We want to make sure any semi-tractor trailer rigs that came in would have adequate room to get off of State Road 100. But the biggest thing was making sure that it was on the east side of the proposed interconnect road that was part of that appropriations as well, not only rehabilitating the existing and the new entrance with the slow down turn lanes, but also have that interconnect road between Airport Road and the new access road.
Is that what you're talking about right there?
Correct.
Lighted in yellow?
That's correct. It's kind of running northwest.
Yes. Parallel there to one.
So they're gonna bring the gate inside of that.
We're bringing it to the east side of that.
Okay.
So then all of that property then would be in the hatched area there, obviously, would be readily available then for development.
Okay. I hate to ask this, but when they move that fence, that's going to mess up our harvesting of the pines.
Shouldn't.
You'll still have,
They're going to go in there and just bulldoze and remove trees, correct?
No, that's already done.
It's already cleared
It's
out.
already clear.
Already cleared? Oh, okay.
Yeah, the road's already there. Everything's clear.
there may be needs some gates that, well, so if the new gate will be to the east, what about the right of way for Florida Power and Clay for that service line that feeds in? Is that gonna have gates there too?
No, that's not an issue there.
So the gate will be before their crossover?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. The gate is between the transmission line and where the interconnect road will be.
Okay.
All right? Okay.
Can I ask one thing real quick?
Yes, sir.
We're on the subject again.
Yes.
Because we have some officials here, I was going to try to reach out to you guys. I was going to bring it up tonight in the meeting. It had been brought to my attention that the gate that you guys are having to use right now with Gate 2, if there's some way where we could try to get it to where we could have it to where that gate remains closed.
It got resolved to that.
Okay.
Is it because it wasn't working? It keeps breaking down? Yeah.
The new system that was added, the call system, wasn't working for the last 6 weeks or so. I notified you the day it broke,
Yeah.
and we tried to work on it, but today, this afternoon, it was resolved.
And we know it's an issue, like, we prefer that it's locked, especially when we're doing military training, but like for a year it was broken. And, you know, we waited for this to get fixed, and now this wasn't working. So we'll work with you. We're very understanding about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, printed circuitry boards and keypads are just so prone to lightning. We fight it all the time out here, so.
No, there's lightning holes where literally lightning hits.
Oh, I know.
It's very.
We had a runway section about 35 feet about 4 or 5 years ago that literally lightning broke it up completely, like a bulldozer had gone across it, and fortunately FDOT helped fix it, so we're very much aware of that. Okay, one other thing, the last thing I have is One of the things that came up recently is and I've asked Mr. Taylor to look into this, so I don't think he has an answer for us tonight, but I think we need to implement a smoking, vaping, chewing tobacco prohibition inside the FBO itself. There are designated areas. I think the Florida Clean Air Act addresses some distances away from restaurants and other facilities, but I've asked Mr. Taylor to look into that. One of the concerns I have is when I come out here, like when we have Hot Dog Thursday, we have a lot of public folks that come out, and we all know that, and of course, not a lot of people smoke out here anyway, but just proactively getting ahead of anything that could be an issue to make sure that we're in compliance with that Florida Clean Air Act. So just wanted to bring you up to date that as soon as Mr. Taylor gets back with us on what the Florida statute is, then I think we need to generate a policy and have that in place for us here at the FPO. All right, that's all I have. Mr. Fryer.
Okay, obviously, the grass is still growing because it's Florida, but it has slowed down a lot this winter. Justin has continued with some dead tree removal. The other thing that he worked on the other day, it really looks good. If any of you get a chance, he pressure washed the fuel farm tanks. You don't realize on that white paint how dirty those things get, but they had a lot of algae on them and whatnot.
He and Rob both.
Yeah, Rob and him both worked out there one day, and in fact, the day they picked, the wind was blowing, they had to be soaking wet, but I stayed away. The other thing is Craig has requested that they change out the fuel on the fuel service station there on the 100 low lead. I believe that hose has reached its life.
Yeah.
So they're working on that. There may be an email coming out. What do you call it, a soak test or something? You have to.
I think the official term is pickle test, but yeah, whatever. You just need to have fuel in there for a number of hours to confirm there's no leaks or anything like that.
They'll pressurize the new hose when they put it on the reel or whatever, reel it out. I guess it'll be laid out. He'll let the tenants know that, sorry, we can't do any fueling. And I'm sure you'll let them know ahead of time so that everybody does need to fuel up.
We're going to try to pick a day that the weather wouldn't be the best anyways, and then coordinate from there.
But other than that, I mean, they've just been getting a lot of little stuff caught up. And Rob did tell me that they did fix the gate today. They finally got that resolved. I don't know if it's some kind of software hiccup or something with that. But that firm gate has been a problem over the years. We really thought with this new cellular communication, we thought, oh, that's it. That's got it done. And now it still has a hiccup. But hopefully that's all it was, an isolated event. Just general cleanup around the shop. They've been keeping busy. Joni's been out here. She's doing her thing. She was proud of herself. She removed some shrubs over there at ESG she's been wanting to get for a while. But anyway, generally just taking care of the field. It's looking good.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fryer. Let me just make a comment. Ms. Tina that does our video, Facebook gives us, or YouTube gives us 2 hours, and then we have to start again. So there may be a part 2. Well, there will be a part 2 before we finish up. So she wanted me to remind us of that. Not that we have to hurry through anything, but just if you go to look at the video again, there will be a part 2 to get the rest of the meeting. All right, Mr. Love.
Mine will be brief, as we discussed a lot.
Amen.
There at the end. The last item I had, we were discussing it earlier, and I appreciate having the opportunity to do that just because I believe it was pertinent to the moment of this discussion earlier. The first thing I have on there is just, again, Craig and I are continuing working on the internal emergency response plan. It takes a little extra time on that because we're taking an existing plan and we are trying to go line by line as we have time. And we've been trying to at least make a day a week to be able to do that. We usually spend a couple hours and it gives us an opportunity to kind of work on that, word it to our needs, and then kind of, accomplish some other items there a lot of times while we're there. So it's helping us to kind of build a good working relationship, and I think we're both getting a good understanding as we're plugging away. So it's just it's kind of a little time consuming, but We are still marching forward. The next item I have is notifications for emergency services. I know that this is normally an item that's something that the airport manager would be doing. And I had asked Craig, and I just figured I would run in front of the board to make sure it's okay with everyone. I don't mind doing that and putting that information out when we're having events. And we've had a couple things here recently between the military exercise that was taking place there over the 4-day, and then here just recently with the event there this past weekend with the firm. And it's giving me an opportunity to reach out and start to build a working relationship with our points of contacts on emergency services for both counties, for both fire rescue and for the sheriff's office. And through this process, I've actually had, because people change, people retire. So, and it's not as easy as you would think to try to track down the right person. You would think you can just call to this person and they say, oh no, you need to talk to this guy. It's not that simple. It takes a little bit of a process. And I think at this point, I've been able to establish that pretty good, especially with these two recent events. And it's given me that opportunity to get to know these guys. And I know some of them want to kind of come out at some point and be able to kind of meet with everybody face to face, because we do have new faces involved. And it's always nice. It's always nice to put a face to the name there. So if the board is okay with it, I would like to continue to be able to do that as much as possible. And it kind of helps alleviate a little bit off of Craig's plate as well, I think. And so that's all I have on that one, if that's okay.
I think it makes good sense, because if they can't get hold of Craig, get hold of you, or vice versa. So having two listed there, I think it's a great idea.
And generally what I do with those is I'll notify the pertinent people on each side for first responder wise, and then I also will always include Craig on it too, so he has it. And like with this recent one there,